The conference room went dead quiet as Tamara's words struck me like a lightning bolt. "Clear out your desk. You're suspended indefinitely," she declared, her voice echoing across the table where all 7 department heads sat watching. No explanation, no warning, just 10 brutal words that destroyed the career I'd spent 15 years building. "But the quarterly presentation is tomorrow," I whispered, my voice barely carrying the windward account. "Rain will handle it," Tamara cut in, not even looking up from her tablet, announcing that all my current projects were being reassigned. Rain, my assistant of only 3 months, couldn't hide her smile fast enough as the room seemed to grow 10 degrees colder. My colleagues stared at their notepads or checked their watches, anywhere but at me, and no one spoke in my defense, not even Dale, who had praised my marketing strategy over lunch just yesterday. "Is there a reason?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady, and Tamara finally looked up, her face perfectly blank. "Personnel matters aren't for public discussion. Security will escort you out." As if on cue, 2 guards appeared at the door. Guards, for me. After 15 years of spotless performance reviews and countless weekends sacrificed to impossible deadlines, I packed carefully while 20 pairs of eyes pretended not to watch through the glass walls of my office. Family photo, plant, award plaques. My hands trembling as I placed each item into a cardboard box that suddenly felt too small to hold my shattered professional identity. Rain appeared in the doorway with rehearsed sympathy, offering to take over and informing me my building access had already been deactivated, and I noticed she was already holding folders, my client files, my work, my life. The guards flanked me as I crossed the main floor, conversations stopping, keyboards falling silent, my heels clicking against the marble in painful rhythm as each step marked the final moments of my career. Outside, rain poured as I stood clutching my sad box of belongings, watching through the glass doors while Tamara spoke animatedly to the team, everyone nodding, moving on, as I was already being erased. 5 hours later, sitting numb in my car and staring at my phone, Tamara's name flashed on the screen, then Dale's, then 3 messages from Rain. Desperate, pleading messages I didn't answer because I had just gotten off the phone with someone they never expected me to know, and that single conversation changed everything. If you've ever been blindsided by betrayal, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below, because this workplace revenge story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what happens next when the tables turn. My name is Kyla Mercer, and until yesterday, I was the senior marketing director at a prestigious advertising firm known as Methodical, brilliant with numbers, and intimidatingly prepared for any scenario, though no one knew how much of myself I had sacrificed for this company. Postponing children, missing my mother's final moments in hospice to close a major account, watching my marriage crumble under the weight of my dedication. All in wasn't just my professional motto, it was the epitaph on the tombstone of my personal life. When I started 15 years ago at 27, the company was smaller and hungry, and we grew together as I brought in accounts that transformed us from a boutique agency into a major player, my strategies earning awards that filled the lobby and made my name synonymous with success. Until 6 months ago, when Tamara arrived as our new CEO in sleek pantsuits and Silicon Valley jargon, and suddenly everything became about disruption and ruthless growth metrics. She hired a wave of young graduates, including Rain, who became my assistant, and Rain followed me everywhere, sitting in on client meetings, taking meticulous notes, asking for copies of my presentation templates, wanting to understand my research process. I was flattered by her hunger to learn, proud to mentor someone so driven, but looking back, I should have noticed how she spent more time with Tamara than most assistants spend with their own bosses, how she sometimes knew about company decisions before I did, how client emails occasionally showed her copied when she had no reason to be included. The morning of my suspension started like any other day. I arrived at 7:15 a.m., my usual time, and the security guard, Dexter, greeted me by name as always, though I remember noticing how empty the office felt, unusual for senior staff. My office door was slightly ajar, and inside my desk drawers were open, files shifted. Someone had gone through my things. I checked my computer and saw my session still logged in, even though I always shut down at night, and that's when I noticed something off. The Windward presentation, our biggest potential client in years, had been altered, last saved at 11:42 p.m. by user R. Parker, Rain Parker. Before I could look deeper, Tamara's assistant appeared and announced an emergency leadership meeting effective immediately. The walk to the conference room felt endless, and the expressions of people I passed told me this wasn't routine. Dale wouldn't meet my eyes. Juno from legal clutched a thick folder with my name clearly labeled, and then came the words, "Clear out your desk. You're suspended indefinitely." After being escorted out, I sat frozen in my car in the parking garage, rain pounding on the roof, unable to drive away. 15 years reduced to a box of trinkets and a security escort, no explanation and no chance to defend myself. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your personal email. Urgent." It was from Graham, our IT director who'd left 3 weeks earlier. "Something's not right. Call me as soon as possible." He answered on the first ring, anxiety tight in his voice, telling me they'd taken his company phone before he could save my contact, asking what was happening, then revealing Tamara had been planning this for weeks, that he'd found proof they were monitoring my email and copying my files, that Rain had been granted access to everything. When I insisted I'd done nothing wrong, his voice dropped as he mentioned the Windward presentation, saying it had been completely changed and they were pitching tomorrow without my strategy. He explained Rain had presented an alternative approach last week, claiming it as her own, but warned me it was a disaster that violated Windward's brand guidelines and contradicted everything their CMO had told me. When I asked how he knew, he admitted he still had remote server access through an emergency backdoor account they'd forgotten to disable, and then added he had recordings of Tamara and Rain planning how to force me out before the presentation so I couldn't interfere. My phone beeped with another incoming call, Tamara, which I ignored, as Graham told me the Windward CMO had just called him, furious about the changes and demanding to speak directly to the person who created the original strategy, me, only 5 hours after I'd been marched out in disgrace. Everything was falling apart for them as my phone lit up again with Tamara's call, then Dale's, then frantic messages from Rain, and I stared at the rain-streaked windshield, an eerie calm settling in as I realized I'd given this company everything for 15 years and been discarded without hesitation. Graham stayed on the line and asked what I was going to do. And that's when I saw Tamara burst out into the rain, scanning the parking lot in panic, spotting my car and running toward it, makeup streaking down her face as the downpour soaked her. "Kyla," Graham prompted, "what's your next move?" I turned the key in my ignition, already knowing this would be something they'd never forget, and as Tamara slammed her hand against my car window, mascara streaking down her cheeks in dark rivers, I made my choice. I lowered the window just enough to hear her frantic plea. "Kyla, there's been a terrible misunderstanding," she gasped, rain soaking through her designer blouse. "Please come back inside. We need to talk now." "You want to talk?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. "After you had security escort me out? After you suspended me without explanation?" Her perfectly manicured fingers clenched the edge of my window frame as she blurted out that the Windward team was threatening to pull out and demanding to speak with me specifically. I smiled faintly. "That sounds like a you problem." "Please," she begged, all authority gone. "Just come back. Take your office back." We can fix this. In my rearview mirror, I spotted Rain hovering near the building entrance, dry under the awning, watching us anxiously, and something inside me turned ice cold. You know what, Tamara? I said quietly. I think I'll take the day off. Maybe the week. I've earned some time after 15 years, don't you think? Her face twisted in panic as she reminded me the presentation was at 9 tomorrow morning, and Windward was a seven-figure account. Again, I replied, that sounds like a you problem. I rolled up my window, reversed out of the space, and left her standing alone in the downpour. As I drove away, my phone erupted with notifications, and I connected it to Bluetooth and called Graham back, telling him they were panicking, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. When he asked my plan, I told him I needed everything: the recordings, proof of file access, all of it, and that I needed to speak directly with Harold Windward. Graham said he was already sending everything to my personal email and warned me not to delete Tamara's messages and to document everything. I drove to a small coffee shop 20 minutes away, somewhere none of my colleagues ever went, needing neutral ground to think, and the barista eyed me with concern as I sat in a corner booth clutching my box of office belongings. Rough day? She asked, setting down my cappuccino. Just transitioning, I replied, surprised by how genuine my smile felt. I opened my laptop and sifted through Graham's files, and the evidence was devastating. Screen recordings of Rain accessing my computer after hours, copying files, altering presentations, audio clips of conversations between her and Tamara, one where Tamara said I was too established and the old guard respected me too much, that they needed new blood aligned with their vision, and Rain responding that she'd studied my methods and could replicate my success with a fresh perspective, followed by Tamara's approval and their plan to move after the Windward pitch was prepared, but before the presentation. My hands shook slightly as I listened, my stomach tightening at the cold calculation in their voices. 15 years of loyalty erased in a single boardroom strategy. Then my phone rang again, Harold Windward's private number, and I answered immediately as his gruff voice demanded to know what was happening, saying the slides they'd sent were nothing like what we discussed. I told him I'd been suspended that morning, and his disbelief was almost comforting as he questioned why they'd sidelined their best person before the deal, agreeing that their new direction was garbage and that they'd ignored every brand guideline and briefing. I closed my eyes, weighing how easy revenge would be. One word and Windward would walk, millions lost, Tamara likely removed, Rain's rise obliterated. But instead, I asked carefully, what if I could help fix the situation? When Harold questioned why I'd clean up their mess after being pushed out, I answered honestly that I still believed in the work and that he deserved the campaign we'd planned. After a pause, he asked what I was proposing, and I told him to give me 24 hours to prepare the original presentation, to request both versions tomorrow and judge them on merit, and when he asked what I got out of it, I smiled and said clarity. After hanging up, I drove home to my riverfront condo I'd barely seen in daylight for years, changed into comfortable clothes, brewed fresh coffee, and set up my home office, rebuilding the Windward presentation from memory and personal backups as the work flowed effortlessly, my phone continuing to buzz as the night closed in. Tamara called 11 more times, Dale called twice, and Rain sent a flood of increasingly desperate texts. Please call back. We need your input on Windward. The team is meeting to rebuild. Your presentation. Any notes would help. Until Tamara finally messaged, your suspension was a miscommunication. Your job is secure. Please, Kyla. My career depends on this presentation. And that last line made me pause, because her career was being built on the wreckage of mine. Around 8 that evening, my doorbell rang, and when I checked the security camera, I saw Dale standing there, looking exhausted and worn down. I opened the door but blocked the doorway. Let me guess, I said. Tamara sent you. Dale's shoulders sagged as he admitted the office was in chaos, that Tamara had locked herself in my old office trying to reconstruct my strategy, that Rain was having a breakdown in the bathroom, and that no one could locate the original presentation files. Because they were deleted and replaced with Rain's version, I said evenly, and the shock on his face looked genuine as he asked why anyone would do that. You tell me, Dale, I replied. You sat there this morning while I was escorted out and said nothing. He at least had the decency to look ashamed, explaining that Tamara told them it was a serious compliance issue and that legal had flagged problems with my work. And when I asked if he really believed that after 15 years together, he faltered and admitted everything had happened too fast. I studied him, the dark circles, the real distress, and remembered we'd started at the firm within months of each other. Why are you really here? I asked, and he sighed, admitting Tamara sent him for my notes, but that he also felt something was deeply wrong about the timing and the suddenness, especially now that Windward was threatening to walk. Would that be so bad? I asked, wondering aloud what it would mean if the firm lost Windward because of how they treated me, and his surprise cut deeper than I expected as he asked if I wanted everyone to suffer. The question forced me to think of the junior designers, the account managers, the support staff, and finally, I said carefully that what I wanted was for actions to have consequences. When he asked what that looked like to me, I answered honestly. Truth, accountability, recognition of what actually happened, and he nodded, admitting most people were confused and upset by how I'd been treated, that no one supported the decision, though no one opposed it either. When I pointed that out, he looked down and apologized, and that's when I made my choice. I'll be at the Windward presentation tomorrow, I said, and his head snapped up in shock until I clarified it wasn't to save Tamara or Rain, but because Harold Windward had personally requested me. He thanked me, but I stopped him, telling him not to inform anyone and to let tomorrow unfold on its own. After he left, I went back to work, finishing the presentation, and around midnight, Rain texted again, saying she knew I hated her, that she was only following orders, that Tamara told her this was how things worked at the top, that she never meant to hurt me and had admired me. I stared at the message, remembering how I'd once mentored her freely, and the betrayal cut fresh, so I didn't reply. Instead, I emailed the completed presentation to Harold Windward with a simple note, and he responded within minutes saying it was exactly what they wanted and that tomorrow would be interesting. I slept better than I had in months, and when my alarm went off at 6, I rose with intention, choosing a deep blue dress instead of my usual power suit, applying my makeup carefully, styling my hair, and putting on the pearl earrings my mother had left me, because today wasn't about looking professional. It was about looking like myself, the version I'd set aside for 15 years while building someone else's company, and as I drove to the office, I rehearsed what I would say, what I wouldn't, and the line I would not cross no matter how tempting it felt. The security guard did a double take when I approached the entrance. Miss Mercer, they said you'd be coming back. Should I call upstairs? No need, Dexter, I replied calmly. I know my way around. The elevator ride to the 14th floor gave me a moment to steady myself, and when the doors opened, I was met with a scene of nervous chaos. Junior staff clustered around monitors, account managers pacing with coffee cups clutched like lifelines, and at the center of it all, Tamara and Rain leaned over a tablet, whispering urgently. They didn't notice me at first. No one did. I stood there watching the panic, feeling oddly detached, until Dale spotted me and his relief was visible across the room. Kyla's here, he announced, his voice cutting through the hushed tension, and every head turned. Tamara's expression flickered through shock, relief, and exhaustion in seconds, while Rain looked as if she might be sick. I walked toward them slowly, unhurried, the room parting before me like water. You came, Tamara said, her voice too bright. We're so glad you're here to help with— I'm not here to help you, I interrupted quietly. I'm here because Harold Windward asked me to attend. Her smile wavered. Of course. Team effort. We're all on the same side. The elevator chimed behind me, and Harold Windward stepped out with his two vice presidents, his gaze finding me instantly. Kyla, he said warmly, extending his hand. Good to finally meet you in person. Likewise, Harold, I replied as Tamara hurried forward, insisting they were ready in the main conference room, only to be cut off when Harold stated he understood there were 2 presentations to review today. Tamara froze, and Harold looked directly at me. Shall we begin? As we moved toward the conference room, Tamara's panic radiated off her, Rain trailing behind, clutching her tablet like armor, unaware that the next hour would change everything. The room went silent as everyone took their seats around the glossy table, Harold at the head with an unreadable expression, Tamara positioned close to him with a fixed smile, and Rain sitting across from me, eyes darting nervously. Since we have 2 presentations, Harold said, we'll begin with the one your team prepared, Tamara. And Tamara straightened, announcing that Rain would walk them through it. Rain stood, smoothing her skirt with shaking hands, sweat gathering at her hairline as she began describing their innovative approach, and what followed was painful. Slide after slide of misaligned strategy, muddled messaging, and fundamental misunderstandings of Windward's brand. Fragments of my work rearranged without comprehension and buried under flashy visuals that contradicted their identity. Harold's frown deepened, his VPs exchanged glances, one scribbling notes faster and faster, until Harold interrupted, questioning why Windward would want to position itself as a maverick after 20 years of building trust. Rain stumbled through an answer about research, only to be cut off again as Harold corrected her assumptions about their customer base, and Tamara rushed in to reframe it as a complementary approach, which Harold flatly dismissed as inconsistent with their briefings. The room grew colder as Rain limped to the end, sitting down flushed and humiliated. Thank you, Harold said politely, then turned to me. Now, the other presentation. I rose calmly and connected my laptop. Yes, Harold. This is the strategy we originally discussed, aligned with Windward's brand values and growth goals. And for the next 30 minutes, I presented the work I'd rebuilt overnight, the result of months of research, conversations, and analysis, speaking with quiet assurance as questions were asked and answered. Harold nodded with growing enthusiasm, his VPs engaging instead of taking notes. The energy in the room shifting completely, and when I finished, Harold leaned forward and said, "This is exactly what we discussed, Kyla. It honors our history while showing us the way forward. It's precisely what Windward needs." Thank you, I replied simply. Harold turned to Tamara and said he wanted to understand something, explaining that yesterday they'd received slides similar to what Rain had just presented, while today they were seeing Kyla's completely different and clearly superior approach, and asking what had actually happened. Tamara shifted in her seat, uncomfortable, claiming creative differences were common and that they wanted to provide options, which made Harold raise his eyebrows as he pointed out that yesterday he'd been told Kyla was suspended and removed from the account, yet her strategy aligned perfectly with their discussions. The silence that followed was crushing, Tamara's smile disappearing entirely, and I quietly suggested that perhaps we should discuss the real circumstances of my suspension. Tamara snapped her head toward me, panic flashing, insisting this wasn't the proper forum, but Harold disagreed, stating that as a client he was concerned about the team's stability and integrity, especially when it impacted their account, and he asked me to continue. I took a steady breath and explained that I'd been suspended without explanation after 15 years, escorted out by security, and that only after Harold contacted me directly about the presentation did everyone suddenly want me back. Rain stared down at her lap. Dale looked uneasy but met my eyes, and I continued calmly, explaining that what Tamara and Rain hadn't anticipated was that our IT director had documented their plan before leaving. I opened a folder and stated that I had recordings where they explicitly discussed removing me after I completed the Windward strategy, but before the presentation so Rain could take credit. Gasps rippled around the table, a VP whispered to Harold, and Tamara sputtered that it was false and out of context, prompting me to offer to play them, only for Harold to stop me and say it wasn't necessary because the presentation spoke for themselves. He stood, buttoned his jacket deliberately, and announced they would proceed with the partnership. Relief flooding the room, until he added that the contract would require Kyla Mercer to personally lead the account, and that if I left for any reason, Windward could terminate immediately without penalty, draining the color from Tamara's face as Harold effectively made me untouchable. He then added that he'd be discussing this with the board that afternoon, mentioning his long relationship with the chairman and implying serious questions about management before turning to me and saying we should talk privately. Once the room cleared, he shook his head at how disgracefully I'd been treated, and when I thanked him, he said it was recognition of value and introduced a proposition, explaining that Windward wanted to build an in-house marketing division and needed someone with integrity to lead it, offering me a division to build, double my salary, equity, freedom to choose my team, even including my IT friend. My mind raced at the opportunity, and when I said I'd need time, he told me I had until Friday, and that if I accepted, they'd announce it alongside taking their business elsewhere. After he left, I sat alone processing everything as my phone buzzed with Graham's text asking how it went. And before I could reply, Rain appeared at the door, eyes red, asking softly if she could talk. I gestured for her to sit, and she apologized, admitting it fixed nothing but that she was truly sorry, and when I asked why she did it, she said Tamara told her loyalty wasn't rewarded, that this was her chance, that the old guard needed clearing out, and as she spoke through tears, I felt a strange mix of anger and pity, realizing she hadn't thought of it as stealing at the time, only understanding how wrong it was when she saw my face that morning, and as I studied her, young, ambitious, easily shaped, I saw a reflection of myself 15 years ago and wondered how different mentors might have changed everything. "What will you do now?" she asked, and the question lingered between us, heavy with everything that had led to this moment. What would I do now? The revenge I'd imagined had unfolded differently than expected. Cleaner, more complete, far more devastating to Tamara, and potentially career-ending for Rain, and now I stood at the point of truth. Harold Windward just offered me a position leading a new in-house marketing division, I told her, with complete freedom to build my own team. Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You're leaving, most likely." "Yes," I said, "and the Windward account goes with me," I added, nodding, "along with any other clients who choose to follow." Rain looked down. "You've destroyed Tamara, and probably my career too." "No," I corrected her gently. "Tamara destroyed herself by choosing speed over integrity, and your career isn't over unless you learn nothing from this." She looked up, confused, and I said quietly, "Ambition without ethics is just greed. Success built on someone else's work always collapses eventually." "What should I do?" she asked, suddenly sounding very young. I thought for a moment. "Start over somewhere new, build something real, and never forget how this felt." As Rain left, Tamara appeared in the doorway, her composure completely broken. "The chairman wants to see me immediately," she said, voice shaking. "Harold called him." "I'm not surprised," I replied. "You planned this," she accused. "You orchestrated everything." I let out a soft laugh. No, Tamara, you did. I just refused to be your victim. What do you want? She demanded. My position? Is that the end game? I gathered my materials calmly. Not everything is a power play. Sometimes it's just about justice. What does that even mean? It means I don't want anything from you or this company anymore. Harold Windward offered me the chance to build something new, something rooted in integrity. The color drained from her face as realization hit. You're taking Windward with you? Yes. And possibly others, I said. Dale has already expressed interest. You can't. I can, and I will. I interrupted evenly. But here's what I won't do. I won't release those recordings. I won't publicly destroy this agency beyond what your own actions have already done. I'm simply going to build something better. As I passed her toward the door, I paused. That's the difference between us, Tamara. You saw destruction as the path to success. I see creation as the path to significance. 1 week later, I sat in my new corner office overlooking the city, watching Graham and Dale unpack boxes as news spread of Windward's new in-house marketing division, and 3 more major clients requested meetings to follow their lead. Tamara had been asked to resign. Rain had left too, sending me a simple message. Thank you for the lesson. I won't waste it. My phone chimed with a text from Harold. Board approved the expanded budget. You're clear to hire 10 more positions. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not just pride or satisfaction, but real purpose. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you. It's building something so extraordinary that those who underestimated you are forced to watch from afar, unable to claim any part of it. If this story resonated with you, remember this. Your worth isn't defined by those who fail to recognize it. The most powerful response to betrayal isn't anger, it's excellence. Like, subscribe, and share if you've ever turned a setback into your greatest comeback, and comment below with your own story of rising above workplace betrayal, because sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply becoming the person they never believed you could be.